A worn, ragged stuffed animal, a well-used pencil, and a desk with names carved into it. These items stay in households for lifetimes, long after they've lost any monetary value. I mean, no one's buying a chipped up table. They usually get it from the dump. But the question I have is, why do people hang on to such things? This is one of those questions that actually got me started on the project. Connection Through Objects follows Sylvia and Matthew Price, a daughter and a father. Sylvia is young, writing with a pencil as she tries to understand how to write, and after throwing it in frustration, her father comes over and helps her write a story and walks her through the experience in detail. The world around them begins to change and reflect these changes as we start seeing the world that they're creating through the mind of Sylvia, the mind of a child. And by the end of it, she's encouraged to write more, and in the long run, that pencil, it's going to be broken, the lead snapped from being thrown around, but that pencil represents for her the beginning of her dream and her love of writing. I'm Jenessa Norcini, I'm the project lead and lead designer.
And I'm Emma Freitas, and I'm the creature design lead.
I started researching through scientific papers, and I quickly realized I wasn't having success with it because I was too focused on the numbers with it. What I'm trying to capture is an emotional thing and not a scientific thing. It's something you can't really document through numbers and variables. So with that in mind, I pivoted to interviewing seniors and had a lot more success. I interviewed 3 individuals, and the through line through all of them was that objects that they kept held memories and cherished memories. They either reminded them of someone or some place that they had been, and they were able to tell me all these beautiful things about those people or those moments in their lives. They didn't have monetary value per se. A lot of these items were honestly something that you'd probably see in a thrift store and you'd walk by without thinking another thing of it, but to them it was almost an heirloom. It was something to be cherished and prized. I asked one person in particular if he would pass that item on to his children, and he said no, because it didn't mean anything to anyone else. It was worthless to anyone else but him. And with that in mind, I began really developing this project and this narrative around these items that would mean something to someone and would be something cherished and loved. Initially, Connections Through Objects was going to be a large-scale project. There were going to be multiple objects, and even at one point, I considered collaborating with my friend Ayushri and doing a project more based around on allowing people to preserve their own memories. I eventually ended up settling on a VR experience. Firstly, because I think the immersive experience lends itself well to talking about memories, as you can bring someone into the memory, and also because I wanted to challenge myself and work in virtual reality, as I hadn't done it before, and I wanted to improve in it. When going through the whole process, the first step that actually was part of the journey was figuring out what kind of cabin I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something warm and cozy, so a cabin was on the table. But figuring out how to master making the place feel warm and comforting is a whole nother battle. There's so much science to a cozy environment. So really trying to master that and understand what makes a quintessential cabin was part of the battle. Once I did that, I also needed to figure out the secondary environment. At first I was just gonna have everything take place in the cabin. It was gonna be a very linear story, but it was very visually boring. There was not really much going on besides them just sitting at a table. So what if we took them into the mind of Sylvia? And once we did that, that was a whole secondary environment. And so it was a lot of designing, placing. Initially the environment was way bigger, so we had to shrink it back down. There was a lot of work that went into it, a lot of work. I spent many a night just staying up late, going through my checklist, trying to figure out exactly what needed to be done. When I started with the experience, I started with concept art. I made some sketches of what I wanted the environments to be. I did some rough colors to try to figure out the vibes of what I wanted the mood to be. I then went on to make mood boards of sorts, just grabbing images of what I wanted for the cabin and the forest involved. And once I had that, it was really onto the experience. I did a rough sequence of where things would be placed in the story. I began editing, refining, and once I knew exactly what I needed and where I needed it, I began the modeling process.
So when I first got onto the project, we had a base setup for both of the creatures. We had a stag and we had a sheep. And the designs were pretty good, but Jenessa asked me to iterate on them a little bit. So I did. I tweaked the designs, and when we were happy with it, we moved on to the sculpting phase. I worked on that in ZBrush, and it was a lot of fun. And then after that, we went to retopology, which was not a lot of fun, but it worked pretty well. It just took a while. And beyond that, we went into the rigging phase. I went and just made sure the rig was working properly. And then I got to animate it afterwards, and that went pretty smooth.
For me, it was very similar to the creature workflow. I would take them into texturing, and I would just basically take the UV map and like lay it out, and then I would hand paint the details because I love the look of hand painted stuff, especially with something so personal as objects and people. I wanted that human touch and that human element to this. I honestly ended up talking to a lot of my peers during studio and seeing their passion for their projects and seeing how they were excited to make things for themselves kind of changed my perspective. I realized I needed to stop making this to make it for SIGGRAPH or for capstone. I needed to make it for me. And once I started making it for me and I started making it this experience, I began enjoying it more. I began enjoying the process. And I think one thing I learned during this is that making a project for passion and making it something that you care about is a lot more important than checking those boxes, and the project is all the more better for it. Ideally, I hope people take away from this the sense of whimsy and nostalgia from playing through it and think about the own objects in their life that hold those similar memories for them, that remind them of their parents or their loved ones, whoever it may be. In an age where everything is made to be disposed of with planned obsolescence and items just becoming lower and lower quality, fast fashion, whatever it is, the items we cling to and hold on to dearly gain so much more value. I think of the blankets that people often cling to when they're given as a child, and even though they're tattered and worn and honestly kind of gross, they matter to someone. They remind them of simpler times in their childhood. This project is an ode to the memories and warmth that items can hold. The small items, the worn doors, the seats, and the rubbed smooth statues. I think if this project makes people slow down and look at the stories that items around them hold, that would be a major success for this project and myself. Thank you for listening.